When I was 20 years old, I had this boyfriend. His name was Tony Smith. I can say his name because I mean, like, you could throw a rock and hit a Tony Smith. I mean, it may as well be like John Doe. He was from Greensboro, North Carolina, and he had come up to Toronto to play for the Toronto Argos, which is a football team in the Canadian Football League. And he had played in the National Football League, the NFL, for many years. And a lot of NFL players, when they're not ready to hang up their cleats, and not ready to, like, kind of be put out to pasture, they'll come to the CFL. And so I met Tony at this festival called Caravana in Toronto. He was so beautiful. My God, instant attraction, obviously. And we started dating. We genuinely liked each other. We liked each other to the point where we could say really, really offhand things to each other. For example, he asked me what my fantasy was. And I got this look on my face. And I said, well, a fantasy would be, I guess, a menage with me and you and somebody else. And he was like, another woman? I said, no, with another guy. And he was like, really? He was like, do you have an idea as to who this guy is? I said, yeah. He's like, really? You have to tell me. I said, it's your best friend.
But wait, there's more.
I was like, oh my God, that is so sweet. No, absolutely not. It is just a fantasy. It is meant to stay there. But just the fact that you are open to it, and don't make me feel shame for feeling this way. He was like, why would I make you feel that way?
Hey, where the bitches at? It's supposed to be titties. Where the fucking titties and the bitches?
And Tony, I don't know. He maybe he was just an anomaly, but wherever we would go, no matter how scantily I was dressed, he would let me move around the party as I felt the need to and interact with anybody. And he would just sit there and just watch me with a smile. At one point, somebody stood next to him and asked him, like, aren't you afraid to let her walk around like that? And he was like, absolutely not. She's going home with me. I don't have anything to be worried about. And you want to know something? He was absolutely right. His level of confidence and knowing that I had eyes for nobody but him was what made him so much more sexy to me, so much more attractive, and made me like and love him so much more.
Oh, you were finished. Oh, well, allow me to retort.
I want you guys out there, you kings, to notice how she makes it. You notice how she frame everything and shit, okay? Notice that shit. Take note of it. It denotes a very fragile, codependent ego and shit that she has, okay? She has a tendency to overcompensate. If I may be so bold, right? She frames everything as if she were the center of the universe and shit. It tells you exactly who she is as I guess a person and shit. I guess a human being. I don't know. She says the most odious shit. She never takes accountability. Throwing up in my mouth. She never takes that for anything that she does. And what she can't see, she can't be objective. We know that. We watched her on Joe Budden's podcast embarrass herself over and over again. Sometimes they intentionally say things to her to get these negative responses and shit, and she never picks up on it. All she does is sit there and run her fucking mouth and smell her own farts and shit. I know I say that a lot. You're just gonna have to forgive me. I would say something else, but it would sound extremely crass. Alright? Then she said all this shit about her boyfriend, made him look like the greatest simp in Canada. Okay? She made him look like the greatest simp in Canada and shit. We don't know what the actual truth is. There's two sides to the story. There's her side, his side, and they say the truth and shit. Now, my truth, what I hear in her voice and shit, narcissistic voice, throwing up in my mouth times 1,000 and shit. I hate saying that word. And you know why I hate saying you know why I hate saying narcissist, okay? No, I hate it. It's a blanket term that, the opposition uses to take no, I'm about to do it again, but throwing up in my mouth. No accountability for anything they do, or at any part of the spectrum and shit, okay? Alright? You notice how she fails to take accountability for any of her actions or be able to look at things objectively and shit. I don't think that, I like to think being positive and shit to a black man across the border in Canada and shit, I like to think that he really didn't take her all that serious and whatnot. She was pretty much just a plaything for him, like much like she was during her entire career and shit, even inspiring his song by the game in part. Alright? Well, that wouldn't get far, man. That is so telling and shit. That's so fucking telling and shit. Okay, she went to this party. She didn't wear no motherfucking clothes. Just wearing something skimpy and, putting all her business out on the street and shit like a woman of the streets. She knew where she belonged. She knew her fucking worth and shit. She decided to, I don't know, maybe she did a shitload of nose candy or something. Just pontificating. She never considered that he didn't take her serious for a moment. She was simply a utility, a toy for him to use on his junk and shit. Okay, like, why would he give a fuck? He's all he has to do is walk next to you and shit, and go into these rarefied circles that you can get into, and he's a +1 and shit. He can get other women like herself and do the same thing and have fun with them too and shit. It's telling, man. Is giving. Her codependency is giving and shit. It's her greatest failing in life that she has no self-respect for herself, and it's not because she was walking around in a state of undress and shit. Simply because of her outlook on life and shit is what makes her weak and shit. All right. And you wanna break a beautiful woman and shit. I don't want to tell you. All right. I know how to do that. I know how to do that shit. I did it by accident once and it cost me a lot. Okay? I'm not gonna put it out here. Okay? Any man if any been anywhere and shit knows what I'm talking about. Alright? Alright? When they feel like they're regular and shit, that is the worst shit in the life, man. The worst shit in life. A lot of us do shit unintentionally and shit. And in our community have an inability to heal. They just scab over everything and shit. They keep building on dysfunction and shit instead of doing anything about it. You really can't trust them, and unfortunately this leaves them as a liability across the board and shit, which you would have to have eyes in the back of your head 24/7 to be anything serious with them or do anything with them on any fucking level. I'm sorry to say that. Now listen to Melissa Ford. She's going to this party, with a yeehaw out and all that bullshit, and she never considered that. He just thought it was funny. Maybe it's like he's walking his dog and shit. Okay? Yeah, someone said, oh, you let her walk around like that shit. The guy that's saying that is her next victim. Alright? The guy that's saying that's talking to her supposed boyfriend, her, I guess her +1. He is her next fucking victim. And you can't do nothing but let him go, right? Ride right through that shit because he's a fucking idiot to even say something like that to the man that's accompanying her to what would be an industry event and shit. She has to get out there and mingle and shit and network, and her product is herself. That's what she's networking, her body and her looks and shit. Okay, how is he gonna stand in the way of business? Why would you and shit when he has a career of his own as a professional athlete and shit? So he's just gonna enjoy the ride. He's gonna get one of those wine flutes and take a couple of drinks and shit. Maybe talk to some people that feel like talking to his ass or being facetious, and he's gonna there's gonna be other industry women doing what Melissa Ford's doing there, and they're gonna be looking at her with green with envy and shit because they know who she is, and they gonna look at him and they gonna come and target his ass and shit, try to wiggle their way into that situation and shit. He's just gonna do the I hate to quote unquote the Stefan Diggs thing and shit, just get in where you fit in and shit. That's an old song by Too Short and shit, when he was a man, not a male. Okay? If you know, you know. Alright? Melissa Ford, you are a post-wall bust down. Alright? And I'm not going to give you any empty White Castle boxes and shit. I'm gonna give you a solid food stamp and shit, because that is your worth, spiritually speaking and shit. Okay, bitch? Right? And I don't think you're all that visually. Right? You would, if I spent any amount of time with this woman, she would try to murder me. Okay? She would try to kill or harm me and be virulent about it and shit. You know, I got to say, you know, in my relationships, women love the fuck out of me. And then at the end of that shit, they want to kill me. They just change my name to John the Baptist. Kings. Kings. Keep your head on a swivel. Protect your bag. And above all else, do not make fallen women the mothers of your children. Okay? I don't even have to say that shit about being a steward of the family. Somebody like Melissa doesn't want that and ain't gonna make no bones about it. You are there to be a provider. Okay? You are there to be a co-signer in a relationship and an emotional tampon and shit at worst. Or all of the above and shit. Okay? You gotta let a hoe be a hoe and shit, okay? You gotta let a hoe be a hoe. Not specifically calling her a hoe and shit, but you know, there's that song by The Game, you know, wouldn't get far. Wouldn't get far, man. I feel like making a commentary about that. Alright? And Melissa wouldn't have got far. She kept her legs closed and shit, okay? Because she's a dime a dozen in an industry that sees women that look 10 to 20 times better than her walking off a bus every day. Alright? Alright? Treat them how they want to be treated. They want to marry everything transactional. They want to jettison everything that is organic about, you know, interpersonal relationships, supposedly loving relationships. Then so be it. If your greatest aspiration is to be a prostitute, then I'll leave 2 20s on the bedside table and shit, and talk to you in unisex terms and shit, because that's how you treat a whore, right? Kings. I meant what I said, right? I wouldn't put this shit out if I didn't care. That being said, SYSBM means save yourself, black men. I can't stress that enough and shit, okay? I want you to go and I hope you enjoyed this unreleased content and shit. I decided to put it out today because it's been sitting on my drive for the longest, and I'm tired of looking at her bitch ass. Alright? So, that being said, sorry, I don't want to mean to be extra, but I'll praise the Most High. Take care.
The Black Patriarchy. A non-existent group of fictional black male power brokers not discredited, erroneously jailed or outright killed by the minority majority who look the other way as they work tirelessly to shame, oppress, and outright take out the altruistic black female populace of the honorable democratic United States of America. 3K's inset bitches. These evil wealthy members of the black patriarchy are the sole reason for all the ills of the black community, walking, talking, holding down jobs, and doing everything up to and including giving their very lives in service to their baby mamas and baby's motherfucking kids. Their motto that strikes fear into the hearts of black women everywhere: bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks.